two big stories, actually 3 or 4 tonight. But I want to deal with this trial, so-called, and I want to deal with Iran. But first, what I just posted, and I want to elaborate on this. Obviously, I wasn't in the Manhattan courthouse, but I was listening carefully to what lawyers who I trust from Fox were saying through texts and emails to the reporters who in turn were reading them on the air, as well as those who were watching in the courthouse and spoke directly in front of the courthouse. This judge is a disgusting fraud who has his foot on the defense lawyer's throat while he allows the prosecutor to ramble on in every direction, including, only now, about federal campaign finance laws and personal insinuations against Donald Trump, as well as suggestions that Cohen's actions can now be inferred onto Trump. That is unconstitutional, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care. And how could you tell, ladies and gentlemen? Because Robert De Niro, who is an unhinged madman head case, was there during the closing arguments making his Genghis Khan speech. And Biden, through reporters, has announced that he's going to give a formal presidential speech after this trial is over. Clearly a violation of campaign laws, number one. Number two, clearly trying to pretend he's presidential. And let me just remind you of this. To me, the Trump campaign has one major point to make. Joe Biden cannot fix what he broke. And Joe Biden will not fix what he broke. Whether it's inflation, whether it's the border, whether it's our relationship with Israel, whatever it is, Joe Biden broke it, and he won't fix it. That's why Biden has to go. But let me go on. So he prevents a federal campaign expert, one of the greatest in the country, from testifying, does the judge. This federal campaign issue didn't come in until closing arguments. It's not even in the bill of particulars on the indictments. So that's, there's so many violations of rules of evidence, of due process, the federal and state constitutions, and so forth. I can't even list them all. If the claim is he violated a federal campaign law, which law? What's the citation? There's none. And we have Stormy Daniels, who was used to embarrass Trump and spew her hate, nothing more. Michael Cohen, who lies whenever he opens his big mouth. He's the lead state witness. That's how preposterous this entire case is. And it is. Now, did you know the Access Hollywood tape was played today? For what? I'll tell you what in a minute. Tell you exactly what's going on here. None of this is relevant. It's all intended to create anger and hate against Trump by the jurors, which is an abomination. This character assassination under cover of a so-called justice system is pure Stalinism. One can only imagine what kind of jury instructions this guy's going to direct the jury to follow tomorrow. Meanwhile, to underscore the political nature of all this, as I said, there's Biden's campaign use of Robert De Niro, a foul-mouthed madman. And the White House, of course, as I said, they've announced that Biden's going to give a presidential address. Now, as a result of left-wing groups, well, first, let's remember this. This is a non-case. No crime, federal, state, or local. Just like the phony financial case. The state misdemeanor having to do with corporate reporting was not violated. The non-disclosure agreement was a legal expense and reported as a legal expense. The misdemeanor statute had already ran anyway. As a result of left-wing groups filing a complaint with the FEC, claiming the non-disclosure agreement was an illegal federal campaign contribution, the FEC said it was not. As if that wasn't enough, the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office, took another look at the case. It dropped it. Indeed, it was Cohen who agreed to committing a list of federal crimes, including perjury. The former Manhattan DA looked at it, Vance, and he dropped it. Bragg originally blew it off. But one of Biden's henchmen was sent to New York to work on the non-fraud case and then moved to the non-crime criminal case. it was taken up. Then this preposterous theory was concocted. Well, the state misdemeanor statute can be revived if the NDA can be said to have covered up another crime. In this case, a federal campaign violation, which they hid throughout the trial. And their key witness, Cohen, of course. The DA has no jurisdiction over federal campaign matters. The FEC in Southern District of New York do have jurisdiction but refuse to bring charges. So there was no federal campaign violation. That's why the judge refused to allow Brad Smith, former chairman of the FEC and federal campaign law expert, to testify for the defense as an expert witness, who would have fired a fatal legal torpedo into the DA's case. As he said on 3 different occasions on Life, Liberty, and Levin, there was no federal election crime, which is precisely why the judge wouldn't let the jury hear from him. And, of course, there's a lot more. I'd be here all day. The so-called judge in this case, Juan Merchan, is what we used to call a hanging judge. That is, the trial process is nothing more than a formality. In the end, nothing can be said, no evidence can be presented, no witness can alter, and no injustice can prevent the preordained outcome demanded by the judge. At least that's the judge's intent and goal. Remember, at the crux of all this, this is the key. There has been no evidence that Trump violated federal election law, let alone did so with intent and for which there's no reasonable doubt. That's the test, to revive the state law. The state law cannot be revived without proving this. They proved nothing. They didn't even raise it during the trial because they didn't want the defense to have an opportunity to shoot a hole through it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? My hope is there's at least one juror with the smarts, the guts, and the conscience who cuts through this static, the collateral evidence, the judge's misconduct, and says no to Merchan, no to Bragg, no to the Biden regime, and no to this horrendous tyranny. Now, this judge was not chosen by a lottery. He was chosen by another Democrat, the top judge in that particular jurisdiction. He's not a permanent judge. He's an acting judge. But he was chosen for a reason. This prosecutor, Bragg, has 34 counts. And technically, if Trump were found guilty of all of them, he'd be spending about 120 years in prison. He piled on where there was no case. Every invoice he used, every document he could find, he created an indictable offense, an indictable offense, an indictable offense. And yet they hid the ball. As I said, the New York State statute had run the statute of limitations. In other words, it was dead. It is a misdemeanor statute for a corporation. If you put down an expense in one category versus another, but even there you need to intend to do so. Trump didn't put down anything. It was done by others. And a non-disclosure agreement is a contract, hence rationally a legal expense. But Mark, it's a business expense too. They're one and the same for the purposes of the corporation. That's the bottom line. If he put it down as a business expense, they would have said he should have put it down as a legal expense. The point is, it's all transparent. He put it down where? In a public filing. It's in a public filing. He didn't hide anything. Or even more to the point, the accountants didn't hide anything. And so I asked Judge Merchan, what federal statute are you talking about under the campaign law? Which one? Cite it. If you're charged with a crime, you have a right to know what the hell you're charged with. Which one? We don't know. Who gets to decide that? A state judge? No. A city prosecutor? No. A New York jury? No. None of them. The FEC? Yes. The U.S. Attorney's Office? Yes. They didn't charge. There's nothing here. This 6-week trial has been nothing but an in-kind contribution to the Biden campaign. That's it. By the Democrat Party in New York. It's an in-kind contribution. A freebie. They bring out all the trash on Trump, the Stormy Daniels, the Michael Cohen, the National Enquirer, all the allegations, all the character assassinations reported day in and day out, day in and day out. You have a Stalinist judge sitting there who's both dumb and corrupt. Gee, that's never happened before. Well, look at the Old South and the judges there. Look all over the world. You've got them all over. Kangaroo courts, star chambers. Certainly can happen in America. It's happening right now, right in front of our eyes. That's what's happening. And then, of course, in these fascist and Marxist or autocratic regimes, they have their press. So they have their Jake Tappers. They have their CNN and their MSNBC dutifully reporting just as they want. And that's what we have today. Joe Biden's in trouble. He's destroyed our economy. He's destroying our currency. He's destroyed citizenship and our border. He's destroyed our schools. He's destroying our industries. He says, I've done more for union. No, you've done more to unions than you have done for unions. He's destroyed energy independence. He's a one-man wrecking ball. He's an arsonist. That's what he is. In our country, in Israel, other countries, what does he have to point to? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's got 8 electric vehicle chargers in the whole country for $500 million, Mr. Producer. Or whatever the amount was. Maybe it was $1 billion, $2 billion. So what the prosecution, let me put it this way, what the Democrat Party's doing through Bragg and through Merchan is they are throwing everything against the wall. Anything that will convince a juror not to like Trump and to vote guilty. Anything. Whether it's the Stormy Daniels allegations, whether it's the Michael Cohen allegations, whether it's the National Enquirer guy, whether it's this, whether it's that, doesn't matter. And then we have 34 state statute violations, and now they bring up the all-important federal offense, and there's nobody there to challenge it because they bring it up in their closing argument, and they go last. The defense can't even challenge it. The judge won't even allow them to challenge the fact that it's raised. He keeps dropping the hammer on them over and over and over again. So, we have to hope there's at least one juror, maybe one of the lawyers, but if they're predisposed to Biden and to destroying Trump, well, then that's where we'll be.